Tonight on Our News, the hunt for a fourth suspect in the Omar Davis Jr. murder case is on. And a car crash ending tragically for a 52-year-old man. What traffic investigators are saying about the accident. Also, contracts signed. Months of negotiations for two unions finally coming to an end. And remembering Hurricane Andrew 30 years later. Welcome to Our News, and thanks for joining us. I'm Marlena Leonard. The unions representing nurses and managers at the National Insurance Board both signing industrial agreements today, while one of the groups is still saying they are not completely satisfied. But first, police are now looking for a fourth man they want to question in connection with the August 15th murder of Omar Davis Jr., as 3 men in custody have been released. Police say the 21-year-old was found inside a garbage bag in the trunk of his black Honda Fit behind a grocery store in Centerville. He had multiple wounds to the upper body and was in the early stages of decomposition. On Monday, 20-year-old Norman Toussaint was charged with Davis's murder. Police say they believe Davis was killed elsewhere and moved to the location where his body was found. A trial date has been set for 2 men accused of the armed robbery and kidnapping of well-known businessman Andrew Wilson. Dominic Stewart and Candy Gibson will be tried on July 8, 2024. Prosecutors say the men forced their way into Wilson's Westridge home around 9 p.m. on December 30, 2021. They allegedly tied up the family and robbed them of jewelry and cash before they took Wilson and his wife to their store, QBC Electronics, at the mall at Marathon. While there, they allegedly forced Wilson to give them money from his store's safe. In all, the robbers got away with $65,000. They also took Wilson's Jeep. Stewart is in custody and Gibson is on bail. A third defendant, Randy Williams, was murdered on June 12, 2022, while on bail for the case. Williams was shot and ambushed by 2 men as he left the A.F. Adderley gym. His murder remains unsolved. Meanwhile, traffic police are tonight investigating a fatality that claimed the life of a 52-year-old man overnight. Our Megan Shepard was on the scene.
Police Press Liaison Officer Chief Superintendent Chrislyn Skippings telling media on the scene that the incident involved a white SUV driven by a visibly distraught female and a male pedestrian who they believe was crossing the street when he was fatally struck.
EMS came. They pronounced the 52-year-old male, who is believed to be a resident of the Yellow Elder Gardens, deceased on scene. As indicated, there was an accident that occurred between the pedestrian and the white SUV vehicle.
Relatives on scene were visibly shaken up. They identified the victim as a 52-year-old Doyle Ferguson. Chief Superintendent Skipping says, as law enforcement continues their investigations, it was also important to show compassion to the family.
As law enforcement officers, we want to show that humane side of us, that we care, we feel the pain that persons go through when there is a loss of a loved one. And so that was one of the family members that I was just trying to bring some condolences to.
Now, Skippings could not confirm whether speed was a factor, but she is encouraging motorists to adhere to all rules of the road.
The driver remained on the scene.
Okay.
Remained on the scene, and like I said earlier, the driver was able to provide us with information. And so our investigations has commenced.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Megan Shepard.
And 3 of the 7 people injured in a traffic accident on Exuma are still being treated for serious injuries. Police say an American man and 2 Exuma residents remain in hospital in critical condition, while 4 others were treated and discharged. The accident happening just after 8 p.m. on Monday in the area of Flamingo Bay and involved a white Wrangler Jeep carrying 5 Americans and a white flatbed truck carrying 2 Exuma residents. Police say the Jeep was traveling east on Queens Highway and the flatbed truck traveling west on the same road when the head-on collision happened. The victims were airlifted to New Providence for medical attention on Monday night. Police in Abaco are investigating an alleged drowning at the Treasure Key Beach in Abaco. Initial investigations revealing a juvenile boy was attending a beach picnic with several friends when he was found foaming from the mouth in the water. Police say he was brought to the shore and given CPR. EMS transported him to the Marsh Harbor Clinic where he was pronounced dead. Investigations are ongoing. A Grand Bahama woman is in custody tonight after police say they found suspected methamphetamine in a home on Cadwallader Jones Drive. Police on the Northern Island say a team of officers from the Drug Enforcement Unit executed a search warrant on the home around 10 a.m. on Tuesday. While searching the kitchen, police say they found a Quaker Oats box that contained a quantity of crystal-like substance suspected to be methamphetamine. Police arrested the woman who was home at the time. Police say the suspected drugs weighed 1.8 ounces and have an estimated street value of $17,500. Warm and steamy conditions outside our studios. That's expected to continue into the rest of the week. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center now, watching an upper-level disturbance. Good evening, Greg.
Yeah, Marlene, it's a very warm evening outside our studios right now, and there is an upper-level disturbance that's going to be crossing our area sometime by the end of the week. That should increase our shower activity. Outside our studios right now, though, temperatures still in the upper 80s, 87 with a few clouds. We'll call it warm. The winds out of the east at 8 miles per hour, and you'll feel slight temperature at 93 degrees. Satellite view, ridge of high pressure and very weak conditions. Winds, wind-like, affecting the islands. Dry conditions as well. A couple of isolated showers across the extreme northwest Bahamas. That's moving towards the west, but that upper-level disturbance out there in the open Atlantic, that should be approaching us by the tomorrow time frame and into Friday. So we're looking for increasing showers and thunderstorm activity across most of the island chain, particularly the northwest and central islands, by the end of the week. And then, of course, the tropics. We are watching a couple of systems out there expected to move across the tropical belt. So we'll tell you about that, and we'll tell you about how your forecast shapes up for the end of the week.
We are just getting started with our news tonight, but when we come back, a corruption case against one public servant is dropped and agreements signed. The unions representing nurses and managers at NIB officially have new industrial contracts. Plus, a look back at Hurricane Andrew as we mark the 30th anniversary of its landfall. It's all coming up when our news returns. This just in, a prison officer is at this hour in police custody. Our news understands he's being held at the Elizabeth Estates police station. We are also learning he's expected to be charged as early as tomorrow for a string of robberies in that community, including several businesses. This is a developing story we will continue to follow to bring you all the latest. The prosecution today dropping its corruption case against Hiram Cox, a senior official at the Department of Inland Revenue. The case before Magistrate Shaka Serville was withdrawn when Cox appeared. The corruption by a public officer charge stems from claims that in 2020, Cox solicited a $10,000 bribe from Preston Roll. According to Roll's testimony, his company Amani Hair had been cited for tax evasion. Roll testifying he secretly recorded Cox asking for the bribe during a meeting they had on August 25th, 2020. In the recording, a man identified by Roll as Cox said, quote, "I'm proposing that I could reduce the fixed penalties immediately. I could take off $100,000 immediately, but that will cost you 10 grand, end quote. In March 2022, the court ruled Cox had a case to answer. Since the complaint was withdrawn after Cox was called upon to present a defense, he was acquitted. And it's been a long-awaited day for nurses across the country. An official contract signing for a new industrial agreement taking place this afternoon between the Nurses Union and the Public Hospitals Authority at the Office of the Prime Minister. President of the Nurses Union, Amantia Williams, outlining some of the benefits in the 5-year industrial agreement.
This is the end, but the beginning. And I say thank you to the nurses in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and I say thank you to the Almighty God. I must assure every nurse in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas that this industrial agreement is one of the best. We've had some key persons in the room, and we thank them for their wisdom and their knowledge.
For more on that signing, be sure and tune in to our news tomorrow. And executives of the Public Managers Union also signing a 5-year industrial agreement this morning. PMU President Cassandra Cartwright-Lewis says while members are still not completely satisfied, the union will hold off on using a strike certificate. Lewis says moving forward, the union hopes the time frame for negotiations and the signing of agreements will be shortened. While Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister, Miles LaRota, outlined some of the issues addressed in the new agreement.
It is important that we recognize the value that the staff bring to any organization, and in particular, our country's social security system. It is important that we ensure that people are properly compensated for the services that they provide.
The agreement addressed issues that were important to the managers, including promotions, salary increases, performance evaluations, training, health and safety.
Following the signing, LaRota noting that the National Insurance Fund is still under severe pressure.
There are union agreements in the past, and part of our job is to satisfy those union agreements to do two things. Make sure that we have an employee complement at National Insurance, including the managers, who are productive and who would want to continue to service the Bahamian people, while also being cognizant of the fund that in being productive, we have to find ways to raise our revenue, be more proactive, but the big elephant in the room is the numbers are the numbers, and at some point that decision would be made.
Prime Minister Philip Davis hitting back at Free National Movement leader Michael Pintard, who recently asked the administration to explain how it determined the country's national debt is due to the impact of hurricanes. Last week, Davis said the government undertook an exercise that revealed more than half of the Bahamas' outstanding debt can be linked to the impact of hurricanes between 2015 and 2019. In a statement on Monday, Pintard asked the PM to justify the calculation. This was Davis's response.
Clarification what needs. Let's start with what is our national debt, and let's start with just the Dorian, what the loss and damage was occasioned by Dorian. It was about 3.4 billion. Think about our national debt, see what percentage that is, and then just don't think about Dorian. Let's go back to Matthew, let's go back to Joaquin, let's go back to Irma, and look at the loss and damage. He needs to do his homework before he asks me questions. If he don't believe it, check it out himself.
As the third anniversary of Hurricane Dorian quickly approaches, some residents on Grand Bahama and Abaco are left with the stark reminder of the dangerous and destructive storm. Tonight, the minister responsible for disaster reconstruction says the work to assist residents on those northern islands continues. Jamila Missick reports.
Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister, Miles LaRota, says since coming to office, they have assisted residents on Grand Bahama and Abaco with relief efforts in the form of materials and money. The minister noting that a team is still on the ground in Abaco making assessments, and funds will be issued to those residents soon.
The problem that we had was that there were, from the previous government, funds that was allocated for the relief, varying amounts to residents, but the demand far outweighed what was allocated.
LaRota says there were some 2,500 residents that the former administration had identified as needing relief. However, when the Davis administration came into office, that number ballooned to 3,700.
We had to allocate in this budget, I think, there's a figure of north of $2 million that, if need be, the government will have to consider extending.
LaRota admitting that until everyone has had their situation solved, there's still much more work to be done.
This will be with us for years. The Prime Minister made a statement early on that our national debt, it can be directly tied to some over $5 billion in terms of borrowing. And so it'll be a while, but you know, as we move forward, our job is to make those people's lives better day by day.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jamila Missick.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
When our news comes back from the break, obstructions and hazards for boaters leads to dredging on Grand Bahama.
Plus, coming up in sports for you tonight, Marlena, our men's national basketball team, they're less than 24 hours away against a big pivotal matchup when they take on Venezuela. We'll give you some details on that. Also, Jonquel Jones and the Connecticut Sun one step away from advancing in the WNBA playoffs. That's all coming up in sports.
And the story of Hurricane Andrew 30 years after making its landfall in the Bahamas. The details when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. A dredging project is set to commence in Grand Bahama next month. In a statement by Lucaya Service Company Limited, LUSCO, a subsidiary of the Grand Bahama Development Company Limited, DevCo, said the Fortune Bay entrance channel requires maintenance dredging. LUSCO officials also say due to recent hurricanes, the south shore of Grand Bahama experienced significant wave activity that formed sand shoals in the navigation canals and waterways, creating obstructions and hazards for boaters. A&D Gators Equipment Rock and Sand is currently working with LUSCO and the regulatory group to finalize an approved work plan. The maintenance dredging works are expected to begin in early September 2022, and completion is slated for the end of 2022. Some parents are still reeling from the economic hardship brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic, making it difficult for them to purchase school supplies for the upcoming school year. As Berthany McDermott tells us, one mother is even considering delaying her children's return to school.
Just days ahead of the opening of the new school year, some are struggling to get the supplies ahead of the fall semester. Like this Camp Road resident who says she has yet to secure anything for her 3 children, and without a job, she's not sure where she will find the means to acquire the supplies. At this point, she's not sure if they will make it to school at the beginning of the school term.
I don't know if they're going or if they can't go this month. I try to see if I could send them like 3 weeks in September. I don't know yet. No job from since COVID. No on the weekend. No job, no none yet.
On Monday, public schools will reopen for full face-to-face learning since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020. Retailers recently told our news team that it seems residents are spending less, but Pierre isn't alone. We ran into Joseph Marshall, who said while his son is prepared for the upcoming semester, it hasn't been easy.
It's been a little pretty rough, but, we got through it. I mean, in terms of, financial-wise, things are very slow and money coming in slow, so we try to do the best we can.
The self-employed plumber's comments were echoed by this resident who says she believes it was very last minute. And despite the recently announced VAT holiday, Clark says it seems some items weren't impacted.
They say they're going to give us rate off for school supply, but they didn't give us rates off all the school supplies. So that is where they get us. You understand? So Clark shoes are still $100 and something. Bags is like $50, $60.
But not everyone is telling the same tale. We spoke to this resident who said she's not only prepared for back to school, but she's excited about it.
It's been going great. I have no hiccups about it. I'm excited, actually, for the children and to get back to school in full.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
One day left before the Bahamas men's basketball team squares off against Venezuela. Meanwhile, Jonquel and the Sun look to advance in the WNBA playoffs. Marcellus Hall is up now in sports.
All right, thanks a lot, Marlena. Welcome to our sports, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. Our men's national basketball team are just one step away. Well, one step closer to advancing in the World Basketball Championship category. Standing in their way will be a couple of other teams, including Venezuela and Argentina. Now, the first step will be getting past Venezuela, a team they will face tomorrow night at the Kendall Odds Gymnasium. The good news, they'll be on home soil, and they'll have lots of Bahamians on board to cheer them on. Let's take a look. at what's ahead.
Official press conference yesterday for the Bahamas Basketball Federation as they announced their national team ahead of the second round of qualifiers for the World Cup. World Cup of Basketball comes your way. As it is, Team Bahamas will play Venezuela tomorrow night at the Kendall-Laza Gymnasium in front of what they anticipate to be a raucous crowd of Bahamian fans. Bahamas Basketball Federation officials and team players excited about what's to come.
We're happy to be here. The players are excited. We extend our invite to the fans to come out support us. The energy we had last game was great. And, we didn't get the victory that we wanted to, but we got to the next round. But having y'all support and you guys behind our back means a lot for the players. And the environment is great. And a lot of these guys don't get to play home as much. And to see you guys come out and support us each and every each time we here means a lot for the players.
Meanwhile, still with basketball, Jonquel Jones and the Connecticut Sun will be back in action tonight as they look to advance to the second round of the playoffs. They'll have to do so as they try to take out the Dallas Wings. That best-of-3 series is currently tied at 1 apiece. Jonquel had 20 points in the last game. She's hoping to get some more support as they go into this pivotal Game 3 here to see if they can advance to the next round.
That is your look at sports here on this Hump Day Wednesday. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you, Marlena.
Don't go away just yet. Greg is back in the Weather Center with your extended forecast. And later, it's 30 years after the landfall of Hurricane Andrew. We'll tell you the harrowing stories of some residents as they relive the moment when our news returns. Welcome back to Our News. We are now watching some developments in the tropics that could mean more rain in the forecast. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is back in the Weather Center with us with more on this. Greg?
Yes, Marlena, we are watching two systems in the tropics right now. Two systems moving across the tropical belt that we're going to continue to monitor over the next couple of days. The tropical wave approaching the Leeward Islands, some disorganized showers and thunderstorms associated with the system. The National Hurricane Center giving that a low chance for formation over the next couple of days. Should move into the Caribbean Sea later on the end of the week and into the weekend. And then there's a tropical wave in the central Atlantic. Showers and thunderstorms associated with that, not really a high chance for development, but the second system we're going to continue to monitor is one coming off the African coast, very strong tropical wave. The National Hurricane Center giving that one also a low chance, 20% chance for formation. Tropics getting very active right now. We are approaching the peak of the hurricane season, the end of August and the beginning of September, so we're asking you, if you haven't already done so, get your hurricane plans in order as things are starting to ramp up. And as I mentioned, those tropical waves will be moving towards the west. That's being steered by the high-pressure system out there in the Atlantic. A lot of Saharan dust still to the north of those and some upper-level shearing. This one will stay to the south of the Bahamas. It's anticipated, but the second one out there in the open Atlantic still has quite a bit of distance to move and a long time for us to be monitoring it. So we will continue to watch these systems as they progress towards the west. Locally near our area, there's a frontal boundary to the north and an upper-level low that's spinning just to the east of the islands. Both of those will combine to introduce quite a bit of moisture across our area by Thursday and into Friday. So we're looking for an uptick in shower and thunderstorm chances by that time frame and into the weekend. So we could see some off and on showers. Make sure you make your plans accordingly. That high-pressure ridge at the surface will continue to generate some very light winds, and that's going to be spelling some very good conditions for boating. Speaking of our boating, all areas tonight through tomorrow, your winds will be out of the east to southeast at 10 to 15 knots. They will fall light and variable at times, mainly across the northwest Bahamas. Your seas running 2 to 4 feet over the ocean. Your high tide is at 7:02 tonight. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In your 7-day forecast, with that upper level low moving towards the area, shower chances bump up really by Friday into Saturday and into portions, well, most of the weekend actually. 66% chance up to about an 80% chance on Saturday, so showers and thunderstorms will be in your forecast. And as I mentioned, make sure you act accordingly. Those high temperatures will be very warm. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe evening, everybody.
30 years ago, Hurricane Andrew changed the meaning of hurricane preparedness for a generation of Bahamians. And like many of you, my own family was impacted. Whenever Hurricane Andrew came up as a child, I would hear the story of how family in Eleuthera had to hold a mattress against a blown-out window, and how after the roof came off, they had to flee the house and run to a nearby family member's home during the eye of the storm. Today, I spoke with forecaster Wayne Neely, who was working at the Met Office at the time of the historic hurricane, to talk about Andrew's lasting impact.
It's the storm that woke up the consciousness of the Bahamas.
Hurricane Andrew is a name remembered by many for its initial weakness and dramatic rapid intensification, the likes of which wouldn't be seen again until Hurricane Dorian almost 30 years later. Neely says the storm was his first experience working with a hurricane in the Bahamas as a meteorological officer, and he tells us what it was like when they realized the storm would be much more powerful than previously expected.
Back then, we didn't have internet technology, we didn't have 24-hour televisions, CNNs and those, but so it was only what they heard on radio and everyone started calling.
Neely praises Basildean's handling at the time, saying he stayed back for hours handling the influx of panicked calls.
They were calling from all around the Bahamas, throughout the Bahamas.
Neely also pointing out that while Andrew was approaching, many Bahamians were distracted by a different historic event happening at home.
The country at the time was in a celebration mood. The country, the Honorable Hubert Ingham had just been elected on the 19th of August, and the hurricane struck the Bahamas on the late 22nd, early 23rd. So it struck the Bahamas on the 23rd, and so the first order of business that he had to deal with was not to celebrate his victory or bask in his glory, so to speak, but the first he had to do was he had to go to those islands, render assistance to them, and at the time the damage was $250 million.
As for Hurricane Andrew's legacy, Neely points to a strengthening of building codes both here and in the United States, but most importantly, the development of technology. When describing the forecasting methods at the time of Hurricane Andrew, he says the total process could take up to 5 hours to complete. The storm claimed 65 lives, 3 of which were directly caused by its impact in the Bahamas.
Andrew was the reason why the trackings got much more advanced.
Thank you for joining us for our news tonight on behalf of the entire team. I'm Marlena Leonard. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.